Welcome back to part 3 of the 2020 Smark Out Moment Awards. We've talked about the Technical Skills Awards, we've talked about the Writing Awards, now we're going to talk about the Programming Awards, which is sort of a little bit of the Writing Awards, but in a different sort of way. This is where we talk about the shows themselves, what we liked, what we didn't like, all the other kind of stuff we don't really do here, the best and the worst, and we want to know what you have to say. So reminder, drop your comments below, tell us your thoughts on what your picks would be for these, and let's just start going along into this. You should check all the other previous parts that we've done if you want to know who we are and all the other information about this. We don't need to do that for every single part. So let's just kind of get things rolling here with the best and the worst in-ring shows. Now, the only options here are 205 Live, Main Event, NXT, NXT UK, Raw, and SmackDown, because they are the only in-ring shows. That's kind of how that works. My worst, I'm just going to assume, is Main Event, even though nobody watches it. It's gotta be based off of what they say. And I'll just say it right now because to speed it along. My best is NXT. The in-ring work is the best out of all of them.
I'll go in reverse. My best is NXT because even though NXT has dramatically dropped in quality this year, NXT is still the best. But my worst is Monday Night Raw, and I don't want to make a joke out of Main Event or even 205 Live to say that Monday Night Raw has sucked this year, and the ratings have reflected that. And just slapping some legends on an episode of Raw on January 4th is not going to save you. Callum?
Yeah, fundamentally, Raw is the worst show. It's 3 hours long. It's mostly terrible. The issue being is the fact that, yeah, I can understand why people would sometimes do Main Event or 205 Live or NXT UK, but the fact of the matter is, if I watched those instead of Raw each week, I probably would enjoy those more than Raw.
And maybe the same combined amount of time.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, and yeah, Raw just has had a huge dearth in quality in terms of storylines. The action is usually okay, but it's nothing groundbreaking. So Raw has just gotten worse and worse. It's hard to pick between SmackDown and NXT, really. SmackDown, especially towards the back end of the year, has really risen up. I'd say if you went for the last 6 months, I probably would go SmackDown over NXT. I've just enjoyed SmackDown more. But as an overall of the overarching year, NXT was pretty good at the start of the year. It's dropped off significantly, especially since Keith Lee left. But yeah, I will go with NXT as the best one.
Let's move over to the talk or recap shows. So this could be podcasts. It could be things like the virtual roundtable or WWE Now or Ask the WWE PC. Different things like that. To be perfectly honest, I have not seen the majority of them. And I don't expect anybody to have seen a fifth of them for the most part. Because who watches Afterburn? Who watches Bottom Line and Break It Down and all these things? I've seen one episode of What's Next. And it's just people talking. It's, these things for the most part just kind of all suck. Nothing really all that great. So I would say just lump them all together, all the recap material that they have, like the Bottom Line and Experience and whatever, where it's literally just Scott Stanford saying this is what happened this week in WWE. They're all the worst because they're all exactly the same. Nobody needs to see it. You watch Monday Night Raw, you get a recap of last week's Raw anyway. On the best side of things, The New Day Feel the Power, because that's the only podcast that I think is really, really actually worth listening to out of the bunch.
I'm just going to echo Tony's sentiments, even though I understand like a lot of what they're doing. That's not for us. That's not for our markets. Like I understand why they have the amount of content that they do. Best. I'm going to agree with Tony on the Feel the Power because I love the New Day. I advise all of you to listen to their tournament podcasts. They're so much fun. They genuinely feel like friends. And I think that's why I love that podcast. But for an in kayfabe one, you can't beat Talking Smack. You cannot beat this show. I would honestly say that a lot of you should go and watch this show every week because Paul Heyman on this show is putting over talent left and right and displaying his masterclass in mic work every week, and I think it's an underrated element of the SmackDown brand.
Yeah, I think fundamentally my choice would be Talking Smack as well, since it's come back. It's not the same when it first came in like 2016, 2017, but it allows the wrestlers to actually say things seemingly somewhat unscripted and develop their characters a lot better. And Paul Heyman is helping out with that side of things as well. And I think Charlie Caruso's doing good on that show as well. So
that's Caleb Braxton.
it's Caleb Braxton. It's Caleb Braxton. Yeah, I forgot Charlie's on the Raw side of things.
Which, if we want to talk about the most noteworthy thing that came out of Charlie Braxton, I'm combining
Charlie
them.
Braxton, yeah.
Charlie Braxton's my favorite.
At least
Caruso.
I can make the excuse. I've been awake for a full day. So the most noteworthy thing was the 9/11 747 that came out of that, which is just the worst.
Yeah, but I've enjoyed Talking Smack for the most part. The worst one, like I have more of an issue. I would understand with the afterburn and stuff like that. It's stuff that's just endless recaps, and I can see why that's like just pointless for the most part. But maybe it does hold a certain amount of value. But the worst is the bump, because the bump actually has things on it which make you feel like you have to watch it, even though you really don't want to, because who would want to watch it? So it's like, the bump is.
I'll argue this for the bump though. I appreciate that it's a different vibe. But especially when they're doing the morning show. When they do the pay-per-view ones where they're just like, hey, by the way, here's fucking this 2 extra matches. That's a little annoying. But they have that fun, like, daytime talk show vibe.
The bump is one of those things that I really honestly feel like I would genuinely enjoy if they didn't inundate me with so much other crap. Like, NXT UK for the most part too. Like, if NXT UK wasn't a weekly show and it was a once a month, here's like a pay-per-view special for 2 hours, I think I'd enjoy it so much more. And if they didn't have, all these episodes of these things on the network and all these things on the YouTube channel and all this on whatever, and then recap this and recap that or whatever, if it was just like one show a week where they did things like they did with the bump, I think I'd actually like it. But after watching so many hours of so many things, and I just can't take, they all get together and they all talk about, oh, can we talk again about the other thing? Sorry. Wait, we all picked everything, right? Best and worst?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Documentary shows. These are things like Chronicle and 24.
Hold on, did you pick your best for that? What was
New
your
Day.
best? All right, okay.
Yeah. So with the documentary things, most of them are all literally the same and they just have different names. 365 just happens to track for 365. 24, I still don't know why they call it 24. The Day of, Chronicle, Making WWE, whatever. Most of them are pretty much the same. But if you count Total Bellas, Total Divas, and the Miz and Mrs. shows in this, then the documentary side of things, those are the worst. Because they're not real. So they're awful. But the best, man, WWE 24 Edge, the Second Mountain. Amazing.
Yeah, look, Last Ride was great. And if Callum wants to pick Last Ride, I understand. But the 24 special on Edge was a great emotional ride. And that may be my favorite produced content from WWE Network ever thus far. The worst? Yeah, I'll probably go with the reality shows, specifically Total Divas, because I think once the Bellas left that show, the Hook left that show. That's just it.
I was trying to think of a Peter Pan joke. Or a Taz joke.
I don't feel qualified to answer this one because genuinely, I don't watch anything on the WWE Network anymore.
Even Last Ride? Did you watch Last Ride?
I didn't watch Last Ride. I didn't watch Last Ride. I didn't watch any of the 24s or the only things that I watched were a couple of the Chronicles. So I'm kind of just going by Chronicles by default because I do like the way they're shot. And again, it's one of those things that I feel like just explains a little bit more of the wrestlers' personalities. It gives us a little bit more of a look into who they actually are as people, and they need to do more of this because they just feel like bodies in a ring just doing stuff, and you're supposed to get invested somehow. These things actually work. They should incorporate more of this stuff into their actual television show. You've got 3 hours to fill on Raw. You're filling it mostly with shit, R-Truth running around backstage and getting called by Drew Gulak every now and again. You just put 15 minutes and dedicate it to an abridged version of a chronicle and tell much more stories of people instead. But yeah, that's the only one I can really go with because I don't watch any of the other stuff.
I do want to say that that Live Forever special on Morgan, that was produced in a different way. It felt special. Paul Heyman perfectly explains why they do the thing that Tony hates, where she's just finding herself. And again, like Callum says, if you watch this stuff and if they put more emphasis on this stuff in their programming, you'd know more about the characters.
Also, shout out to Ruthless Aggression. I like that.
No, that's my worst of the year.
I liked it.
And there's a good reason why it's the worst of the year because there's a good standard. Well, listen, WWE documentaries, brilliantly produced. They put a lot of effort into it, and so I can't fault them on that side of things. But it's completely not true.
Not truthful.
It's their interpretation of history. It's that saying history's written by the winners, and it's the idea that this whole ruthless aggression thing was born out of the fact that they needed to switch things up, and they saw they needed to move on beyond the attitude era. No, the reason why they went with this whole ruthless aggression thing is because they were tanking in the ratings. They'd lost all of their big stars, and so they have to try and bring up some new ones from the ashes of this. Yeah, and John Cena, as we're watching as the part of the Paul Heyman SmackDown journey, John Cena for a long period of time, they talk about John Cena with this Kurt Angle thing. Yeah, it was a great debut. Then he just was nothing for about 6 months.
In fairness to John, at least in the Ruthless Aggression documentary, he does admit that he failed.
Yeah. So there are elements to that, but it's just another I would say I don't really know how to describe it. It's history written by people who are trying to frame it in their own light. And you could say that about any history is the way they want to do it, but I don't think any real documentary that WWE does of its own history can really be taken seriously.
Remember when that was supposed to come back at the end of the year? Never did.
So yeah, I would go with discretion. Outside of that, Miz and Mrs. as well. Just why do they do it anymore? It just seems pointless to me. Miz isn't even that big of a deal anymore anyway, and Maurice isn't even on the show.
Let's move over to Oddball Shows. This is pretty much just everything else. So it's Fight Like a Girl, Ride Along, Spelling Bee, Superstar Home Baking.
What is Spelling Bee?
Yeah, they did at least one episode of that. WWE Spelling Bee.
Wow.
This is the very beginning of the lockdown when they were trying to figure out what they could do. So they had Corey Graves and Renee Young or whatever doing a spelling bee. Yeah. The worst is they did an episode of something called WWE Astrology. And you don't need to watch it. It is.
When do you find time to watch this?
This was a 10-minute video or something on YouTube where it was just showing I don't know, AJ Styles is a Virgo. Whatever. It's utterly pointless. Terrible. But what was fun is the R-Truth game show. I actually like that. To a certain extent. I mean, it wasn't amazing, but compared to all these other ones, I'll take it.
That would be my best, the R-Truth game show. My worst is by far. Well, first of all, I might actually have to change it to that spelling bee thing that I didn't even know existed. But they do so many of these ride-alongs now that are just oh, we got KFC. Remember KFC? I think the fact that they're just throwing brand placement into everything. Ugh. So that would be my worst. Brand placement episodes of Ride Along.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable picking a worst for this one because, again, like I say, I don't watch any of it, so I'm sure a lot of it is bad. So I probably would find something that I could say is the worst, but again, not watched any of it. Don't feel comfortable saying. Best, if it counts, is Up, Up, Down, Down stuff. always the best. Up,
Oh
down,
well,
down.
if that counts, then yeah, that whole channel.
It's always
is...
counted before in this segment. So
Yeah,
I'm going
I
to
have it on
include
there.
it. Yeah,
All
so
right then.
up.
Yeah, I gotta switch that because up, down, down got me through this pandemic in a lot of ways in the early days.
Yeah, especially because now they've got it's now just obviously Austin Creed is obviously a big part of it, but they've got the like a real set foursome of him and Cesaro, Adam Cole, and Tyler Breeze, and they're always great together. And now you're adding
BRE.
BRE together. You have like nice little cameos every now and again, and even though obviously a lot of things have changed up for them because of the pandemic, they can still do things because like Zoom and all this other stuff. So they haven't really had to slow down because of it. So yeah, I really enjoyed everything up, down, down have done this year.
On the new program of the year, this is just the brand new ones. So you've got Astrology, Break It Down, Dream Match Mania, Fight Like a Girl, If It's on the Internet, Our Truth Game Show, Ruthless Aggression, Spelling Bee, Superstar Home Baking / Superstar Home Cooking, Timeline, Virtual Roundtable, What the Hell's on Your Cell, What's Next, and What's Your Hobby with Robbie. Those are all the brand new programs that they did this year. WWE Astrology is still the worst, and the best, I actually kind of liked If It's on the Internet. I like the R-Truth Game Show. I like Ruthless Aggression. It's one of those, to be perfectly honest. None of them are really all that great. So it's not like this is like, that's the one, you know. It's like,
If It's on the Internet, had some good stuff. Because they dressed like the Carmella was dating John Cena thing and all that weird
right.
aspects of that. The worst, fundamentally, is Fight Like a Girl.
Never even
Fight Like
saw
a
it.
Girl was you know why you never saw it, Tony?
It was on Quibi, right?
Because it was on Quibi.
Yeah.
And Quibi, as we all know, was a massive failure.
Massive.
So fundamentally, Fight Like a Girl is the worst. The best, because it's the least offensive and featured an episode on Owen and Bret Hart, is WWE Timeline.
Yeah, I'm going to give worst to Ruthless Aggression still, just because I don't like the WWE's portrayal of its own history. Best I'll give to, because even though I didn't watch the whole series, I did see enough clips of it to make me feel like, oh, this might be fun watching if I ever get like time to just sit down and go through it. Last Ride documentary.
Yeah,
you should watch it. Yeah, my favorite blooper was him telling DX to go fuck themselves. I think that was a highlight of the year for Undertaker, who had a very weird year. That was a highlight.
Yeah, I just got two words for you.
I just got two.
Fuck off or something.
No, we have 3 words for you. Go fuck yourselves. Like, okay, awesome.
And we're actually just wrapping it up here with the programming awards. This is the quickest one that we've, I think, ever really done for the most part. The best,
the length of a Quibi.
Yeah, pretty much. The best and the worst pay-per-view or special event. I would say if you want to, you can classify Great American Bash and Halloween Havoc and whatnot in there. I didn't, because to me they were still just episodes of regular TV shows, but this is everything for the most part from NXT UK TakeOver Blackpool 2, which, yeah, that happened this year. Worlds Collide, NXT versus NXT UK happened this year. You know, remember when Angel Garza dropped the Cruiserweight title to Jordan Devlin?
Oh my god, they did Imperium versus Undisputed Era this year, didn't they?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's, how long has this year been? What do you guys have down for your worst?
There's
honestly,
a lot.
I got 4.
Actually, I've got 3. So there might be crossover there, but yeah. So my 3 that I have, because actually I think overall WWE didn't do too badly on pay-per-view this year, especially considering the circumstances. But the 3 that stood out to me are Super Showdown, and it has no excuse because it was in front of the crowd and it was still terrible. Money in the Bank.
That's one of mine.
And Extreme Rules.
That's one of mine.
Extreme Rules is one of mine too.
I've got WrestleMania, Money in the Bank, Backlash, and Extreme Rules, and I've got 4 asterisks next to Extreme Rules.
So I've got Extreme Rules, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series because I was sour about the Undertaker thing, but I won't go with Survivor Series. It's it wasn't for the just straight up anomaly that was WrestleMania 36. I would say it's Extreme Rules because that was just a fundamentally a bad show. But WrestleMania 36 is always going to feel like the WrestleMania that never was. So that's my pick.
I actually had Survivor Series as one of my potential favorites.
I was a salty prick about the Undertaker thing. Don't listen to me on Survivor Series.
Let's see, like realistically, both Money in the Bank and Extreme Rules are both bad shows, and I don't think there's any real getting away from that. But I think the fact that Super Showdown was still a very bad show, it had the awful Brock Lesnar Ricochet match, had the awful Goldberg and Bray Wyatt match. They had that gauntlet match, which for the most part was pointless, and just had the Undertaker appearing at the end of it. And yeah, just like you had that the Rollins and Murphy against the Street Profits, which is okay, it's an okay match, but you have that match. The Street Profits lose that match only to win it the very next week, and then you run it back at the very next pay per view. It's just
you have Andrade versus Humberto Carrillo 50, didn't you?
Yeah, and then it just builds up around the idea that this is again the Saudi Arabia shows, and Saudi Arabia shows already always have an uphill battle to climb because it's just a terrible idea in the first place. Like morally, it's just completely wrong to have these shows in the first place. It had a crowd and was still a bad show, and at least with all the other shows, I can give them some sort of grace period with the idea of okay, they're working with what they've got. They can't do things in front of an audience, so. But this one did, and it was still terrible, and I didn't enjoy it. So yeah, Super Showdown has to be my pick.
I want to give a shout out to Money in the Bank. You guys were saying it was one of the worst. I remember really liking it, and I think it's because it was the first show that ended at like 9:30. I think I remember that being like, oh, this is fun. I hope they keep doing this.
Yeah, that show was terrible. For the best, I have written down Royal Rumble, NXT TakeOver 30, and Survivor Series. And there were.
Hold on, yeah, wait a minute.
You had 3 of your favorite matches this year from NXT TakeOver Portland, and it's not your favorite show of the year.
You cut me off. I was gonna say, and NXT TakeOver Portland has a note for most amount of matches, like overall, like 3 out of 5 matches or whatever that they had done. So I'm trying to remember what happened at NXT TakeOver 30 because TakeOver 30.
That's McAfee and Adam Cole.
And they had, if I remember correctly, they had like a couple other good matches too.
And they had the ladder match too. You're probably thinking of the ladder match.
Yeah, North American Championship ladder match. It would have been, would have been Io Shirai against Candice. Was it Candice that one?
Io versus Dakota Kai.
That was Dakota Kai. That was a good match, but I think, the main event left me sour because I really didn't enjoy Karrion Kross against Keith Lee. So I wouldn't have picked that one, like if it was down to me. Like I only have 2 listed on this one, even though actually I kind of enjoyed Worlds Collide for what it was, but I wouldn't say it was super special. The only ones that really stuck out in my head are NXT TakeOver Portland and the Royal Rumble, and I think in my mind it's a slam dunk for the Royal Rumble. Even though the Women's Royal Rumble wasn't the greatest out that they've done so far, and it did have that was it Bayley against Lacey Evans, which was just like a nothing match in general. I feel like Asuka versus Becky Lynch was a great match. We had the Men's Royal Rumble, which I think is the best Royal Rumble match they've done in a long time. Yeah, you had The Fiend against Daniel Bryan, which is probably The Fiend's greatest match since he's been a character in the company. I actually had a fairly fun, although it was probably way too long, King Corbin against Roman Reigns match. That little False Count Anywhere match they had at the start of it. And obviously they didn't have a WWE title match because Brock Lesnar was in the match, but I think the Men's Royal Rumble on its own made this one of the best shows of the year. And the fact it was in front of a crowd makes it so much better than all the other shows really as well. So.
Okay, so I have 2 Royal Rumble and NXT TakeOver in Your House, and as much fun as I had at NXT TakeOver in Your House, just for the novelty of it, it's the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble was the one show this year that felt like a proper WWE show. So
By
by
default,
default.
even.
Almost like, yeah, it's by default. It's the Royal Rumble. And then it had quite a few good matches. Becky Lynch was still just like the top woman, or maybe even the top overall of the year. And they had their turn of edge. There's a lot going right there. And it all derailed.
Yeah, Royal Rumble and Survivor Series, lots of really good stuff there. I think overall, if I'd have to go based on just pure merit of like match versus match or whatever, I'd probably go Takeover Portland. But I can definitely see the argument for Royal Rumble. And for that matter, Survivor Series had a lot of good stuff too. Yeah, so I think
Did the
probably
year start off strong, or was it just like strong in comparison to the shit that was this year?
it had some good stuff, but it didn't. I wouldn't say it started off super strong. Royal Rumble was a good start for things.
I generally believe that obviously a few anomalies outside of it. I think WWE had a good year on pay-per-view because you really couldn't fuck things up too much when it's mainly matches that are happening. It's whenever they had to actually develop stories and stuff like that is when they really started to shit the bed on Raw and stuff like that. So yeah, despite everything, it was a terrible year in just general senses because of COVID and stuff. But I don't feel like WWE was outright terrible outside of just Raw's entire booking. Raw was terrible. Outside of that, it ranged from it's not that great to this thing's actually pretty good. And I think a lot of their pay-per-views on the whole delivered. Maybe that was also just due to the fact that a lot of them were a lot shorter than they used to be. So,
alrighty, everybody, those are the programming awards.
We're halfway through this thing.
Saying through that, yeah, we're 3 out of 6 parts down. So continue on here doing what you've been doing. Click on the next part. Stay tuned, whatever it is. And we will see you in part 4, which is the On-Air Personality Awards.